Welcome back, Particle People. Last time we were here, we were talking about the once human hard mode servers. We very briefly got to go into all of the changes of the new hard mode servers, and I accidentally said season too many times in there. The season is different than the servers are different than the scenarios. It's the same scenario, this one's just on hard mode. The new season is not started yet. But despite that little bit of a misspeak, that video still does have a lot of information about what has changed. If you're looking to watch it, I will link it in the description below, and no, I'm not going to start saying Manibus. I'm going to say Manubis. I don't care if it's wrong. However, there's been a lot of backlash recently about the amount of things that you can bring with you to the new server. In fact, there's a lot of people saying that we shouldn't be losing anything at all and it should just be a continuous progression, similar to like what World of Warcraft does. However, I'm about to drop a very controversial opinion. Please bear with me as this is just my thoughts and maybe even hear me out. I think the way World of Warcraft handles progression is stupid, and I really like the server wipes. I in fact think that there should be more extremes to this server wipe. Before you go to my comment section, actually do the comment section thing anyway because it helps me a lot, but before you get your pitchforks ready, hear me out when I say the server wipe was not extreme enough. So bear with me just one moment as I justify my current opinions on that, as well as look into more detail of what I think should have happened and why World of Warcraft leveling sucks. In the latter half, I will go through the leveling process of my main character through a new hard world server and just show you what I'm feeling right there. Let's start off of why I hate traditional MMOs and the way that you level up and obtain gear and power and such. Well, simply it feels bad. No matter what expansion you've played, if you ever have done an MMO, you'll know when the new expansion comes out, suddenly all of your gear tends to be completely useless. Yes, I think it makes perfect sense that working my way through the hardest version of this raid, where I got this amazingly powerful dagger, should be completely useless as compared to a regular dagger you find 5 minutes within the new expansion. Power creep is annoying and nobody wants to deal with it. Which leads me to the second point, is power creep is annoying even when it's just the enemies. You go to this new expansion and this new environment, and even though you were just slaying old gods, suddenly these regular townsfolk in the new place are just as strong as you and might even kick your butt. Think of how weird power scaling feels in that kind of optic. No matter what god you may have slayed, whether it be Deathwing or the Lich King or anything, it doesn't really matter because the next expansion is going to have some bad guy who is somehow magnitudes more powerful than the previous bad. At least from my perspective, being the person who gets pulled back in time with the scenario itself feels a lot better than suddenly having enemies, which apparently could have slayed the previous big bad with no issue. I think it makes more sense to continuously have the world get slightly harder while you yourself are facing some kind of setback or reset, almost like an Amnesia instance with Samus and her franchise, but not to the same extent where you can't use your basic ability. Which nicely leads me to why I think the server reset wasn't actually enough. Well, firstly, you can just bring whatever you want for the most part. It may be more expensive and you may get less items if you take, let's say, an advanced electric drill, but it completely nullifies any of the early challenges that you may have been facing. I do like that you get to keep your blueprints, because keeping your blueprints means that you're going to become more powerful in the late game than you were at the end of the last scenario. However, these two things together create this weird imbalance where the game feel is kind of thrown off entirely. You see, you have the ability to get advanced materials as quickly as you want to, and you have the blueprints in order to make those things. However, the only thing you don't have that's stopping you is the levels. Conveniently, higher level resources will allow you to get more experience. This is where my head started to break down and say, why should I make this pistol 3 times in this run instead I could just make it the once? All I have to do is get to level 20. There are lots of people who are endlessly farming salt to get to levels quicker. I wasn't going to go that extent. Instead, I just decided I'm going to grind a whole bunch of resources to have a stockpile and only make my gear once until the next piece of the game releases. Which is what's going to lead to a lot of crazy shenanigans that I have to show you, as well as a lot of other complaints that I have with the current state of the game. With that said, I think we could have prevented a lot of what I'm feeling in the game right now just simply by blocking certain harvesting tools from being transferred over, as something just feels so strange about trying to build your little wooden hut with your little wooden burners while using a massive electric drill to collect insane quantities of resources at magnitudes and speeds that you've never once imagined, unless you've had a drill before, obviously. Maybe to compensate, they could make it a reduced cost to bring your deviants through, as I feel like that's one of the main things people are going to be attached to, especially now that there are shiny deviants in the game. By the way, I spent a lot of time hunting those. Without further ado, let me show you exactly how I played the game entirely wrong and only went with my tier 3 armor set by doing nothing correctly in once human. And this is on a hard server, by the way. Dropping in, I do something that I think is a bit surprising and make a quick beeline to one of my favorite locations in the game because it happens to be near the deviant spawn for Frog the Leaper, not Frog the Leper. I've made that mistake before. Once I arrive, I realize I have just enough space to set up a base of operations. This is where I'm going to be smelting almost all of my ore, as well as cooking some home-cooked home-cooked meals. Normally I'd be really worried about how long it's going to take me to make any progress because I'd only have a crude pickaxe, but because I was able to download my giant electric advanced mining drill, that's what it's called, I am now able to mine copious amounts of materials, including iron, which I shouldn't even have access to at this point. With that said, there's going to be a whole lot of boring grinding that I'm going to cut out of the video so you don't have to deal with it, but here's a quick little idea of what it looked like. Okay, initially there was a montage here, but I didn't realize when I was recording that I was also listening to Legal Eagle, so his voice is in the background of all the clips, so I can't use a bunch of it. Let's just pretend it was a great montage. Leave a comment on how much you loved it. I'm sure that was surprising. I'm not gonna lie, this actually took a little bit longer than expected, so I decided to take some breaks in between the mining and processing to go try and find myself a shiny mushroom. You see, I was lucky enough to get one on the alt character, but this is my main. If my alt has it, then my main needs it, and a better one at that. After what was roughly 900 mushrooms picked, I finally got myself a shiny mushroom, and it's the same exact one as I had on the other character, so I win, except this one's even better. Once I got my shiny, there was only 3 things left to do. The first being collecting more ore and smelting it, the second being collecting water and wildflowers to make tea because it makes a delicious amount of experience, and the third one was running through the cities recklessly, even though they're way higher level than me and I have all broken gear because I need to collect mandatory parts from drops inside. I gotta say, when you're not actually shooting at the enemies and you're just trying to evade them and you can die in like 1 or 2 hits, this actually makes a pretty fun experience just running around playing tag with them. Especially if you're listening to music and you're a little bit distracted and something sneaks up on you, it's almost like a little horror game. At this point, a few of you asked, well, if these guys hit so hard, how have you not died yet? And I never claimed to not die. I am terrible at video games. I died no less than 20 times. But in those deaths, I got more gains than the Liver King, who is totally not natty, bro. Nevertheless, between making my tea, collecting the ore, melting that ore, making the gear, making the ammunition, and finally getting to level 20 where I can use my good gear, I did find Frog the Leaper, which allows me to explain to you that I am also now firmly addicted to once human fishing. Hey, you remember a minute ago when I told you about that there's shinies in this game now? Well, there's also shiny fish that you can catch, and I caught this giant shiny Oscar, and I named him Asmongold. And if you know anything about ichthyology, you'd know that this fish tank is far, far too small for Asmongold here. The only way you can save him is by subscribing. Subscribe for Asmongold. Sanford is not affiliated with Asmongold in any capacity. This was just a meme because I was speaking about World of Warcraft earlier. I honestly spent way too much time not making this video just fishing because I very much do enjoy the new reworked fishing. When Once Human came out, I did not understand it, nor did I have the time to look up a guide on fishing. I'm glad they redid it the way they did. Fishing, fishing, fishing. I don't think I said fishing enough. Back on topic after that little tangent. I head back to the first areas to get the rift anchors that I need to progress to the first boss. I was a little bit surprised to see how durable the enemies are because my alt had a little bit of trouble with some enemies, which made perfect sense as I'm not familiar with that build. It wasn't really super refined. However, this build, I'm very confident in the crazy amount of damage it does, yet some enemies still just were a lot thicker than I was expecting. Some may say, thicker than Canada's #1 export, maple syrup. Just kidding, that's not Canada's #1 export. Their #1 export is crude petroleum. If you thought this world was fun, where actually cool things were being exported and not just dead dinos, then you're wrong. We're all gonna die. We're dependent on that shit. Hopeless spiral into nihilism later, I am here trying to get through these early levels, but I keep getting annoyed because I really hate it when I'm finding these epic and legendary drops, which are actually just tokens for some stupid event. This may seem like a very small detail, Once Human, but if you ever see something like this, just let me tell you, there's only so much dopamine you can get from finding cool drops. The system at B already kind of discourages that because a lot of rare drops you'll find are completely useless to you. When you add in these dropping off of every other enemy in the purple and yellow quality, it's really gonna burn people out and not make them feel like they're achieving anything as they are killing and looting these enemies. You're kinda just undercutting the dopamine flow, dude. But I will take the bonus star crom, don't get me wrong, I need as much of that shit as I can get. However, that's one of my smaller complaints about going through the hard mode server. Honestly, I think they could have done a lot more besides just tweak the numbers. I've noticed that even though I waited a few days to play on this server, this one is also having incredible performance issues due to the sheer amount of people and buildings. Things just don't really load. Here's a clip of me just shooting people out of space because the enemies are just kind of floating here, like they're target practice. And also, this is what it looks like when you're doing a team event and there's just a bunch of people. Obviously, I didn't have to lift a finger, I just got the rewards after sitting there and making love to this car. I've also tested out the bosses with this build, and no shocker, they're harder than they would be on the regular server. However, they are still very easy to handle, minus the spider that I died to because I'm an absolute goober. And I don't think that I need to show you very much of the leveling process here on the hard mode server because we've seen enough of it in this scenario to know what it's like. While I don't think that these scenario resets are a perfect solution, I do think it's the best one we've had so far. I genuinely cannot remember an MMO that I've played where I have something to look forward to every single week, because there's always something changing, the resets are meaningful, and the season just continues to progress as you're inside of it. I played World of Warcraft for years, and let me tell you, no matter what you were doing, at some point everything stagnated. Typically, you would play a lot during the early part of a patch, you'd get as far as you possibly could, you'd start doing the raid bosses, and eventually you would just really get on to do those raid bosses with your group. Some people got really big into professions, or battle pets, or making alts, but if you didn't want to do one of those things, then chances are you only played seldomly with a very particular raid group. I flat out had some friends that would play for a while, get through the patch's main content, not care for any of the little bells and whistles, and just come back when a new patch came out. I think the only reason I played more than most people is because I was flat out addicted to PvP, and I'm a terrible rogue player. All of that to say that I super approve of the way that Once Human is handling the seasons and scenario resets, but I do kind of have to, in good consciousness, dive into my concerns, and there are a few. The first goes as follows. In this server, you can find legendary mods before you even get to the 4th boss. These aren't little baby goo goo gaga mods. These mods can have some serious upgrades on them too. They're quite impressive. So what's going to be the incentive for people to do hard mode dungeons if they're already finding these mods here? Are we going to add a secondary talent system like for gems or badges or something? Who knows? The next concern relates to the amount of options that you have as a player. Yes, there are a lot of builds that you can do with a lot of varieties and mods that change and augment the way you play, as well as special passives on gear, but are we going to be getting new weapons, or mods that change existing weapons to function differently? Will there ever be a time when we get combined keywords, weapons that can potentially do both blast and bounce, and they just do a little bit less of both? Once we max out a build, what is going to be the incentive to try a different one, or what can we do in order to further enhance our power? And my final concern is about Once Human developers directly, because I'm not entirely sure if they're ready for this. What I mean is, we're entering Once Human's first plateau. There's no way around it, this is going to be our first content plateau. We now have the hard mode servers with some events that are very fun, but most of this content is going to be things that we've visually seen before, so we're not going to be too excited. I would expect that player count would be on the lower side for the next few weeks as we're waiting for more information about these upcoming seasons. But players are hungry for new content. You can tell because they were completely caught off guard by the amount of hard mode servers they required. They essentially dangled the keys of new content as just a teeny tiny bit of new content. We only really changed the damage sliders, and people jumped on that so quickly that they were completely caught off guard and had to make more servers. By the end of these hard mode servers, some of our builds are going to be so incredibly powerful, we're going to be like the same power level of a disappointed grandmother's stare, as she stares directly into your eyes and your soul tells you you've done something wrong, but you're not entirely sure what, and all you want to do is cry. But with that power level, we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions. How are they going to make a game that's still fun if we're absolutely broken gods? Are they going to make it so that your blueprints are scenario specific so we can't bring our new weaponry? Because I think that would be disastrous for the community, as that's never been discussed before as far as I'm aware. Or are we just going to have to deal with a harder world regardless? Including new players coming to the game for the first time, are they going to have to try to keep up with us? I'm just not sure how they're going to balance this power level difference. But what I can tell you is I'm very excited to see them try. So far, Once Human has done things that I never thought would be possible in a game during my lifetime. I've been so addicted to this with over 350 hours online now. This scenario system that they have is very unique, and it keeps the content feeling at least a little bit exciting week by week as we march towards new scenarios. So at risk of sounding like an old person who's trying to be a young person, please let them cook. Yeah, that felt dirty. I'm far too old to say that. But please, let me know what you have to say in the comments. I'm sure a few of you are going to be upset that I would even suggest the resets weren't hard enough. These are all my opinions. Please express yours with me in the comments. If you did not subscribe, do it. What are you waiting for? Did you forget about Asmongold? Okay, I said subscribe again, so I know most of the people have clicked off the video, so this is going to be a secret between you and me. There's like 12 of us here, okay? I had two segments in this video I had to cut out. The first one was the fact that this was a pacifist run. I accidentally killed like 3 things forgetting what I was doing, although most of this game happened without killing things until I got the whole build. It was supposed to be a theme, never made it to the video. The second piece is much more embarrassing because I was going to show you how to get a solar drill, but I'm an idiot, and instead of grabbing the metallic fiber cloth, I grabbed the, cotton cloth? They were both blue and I'm dumb. This is our secret now. So while you can get a solar drill by cheesing it and bringing certain materials with you, I failed to do so because I am just, well, let's be real, I'm an idiot. Back to the outro. And thank you very much for watching. We're very close to 5,000 subscribers and I would love to pass that milestone. But as always, this has been Sam for Days. I'm Course and I get everywhere. Bye bye now.
cheese.